Everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome into the Better Baseball MLB DFS live stream here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. I am your host, James Grande, joined by Colby Conway. And Colby, I just want to say, I want to start off this Tuesday on a positive note. I hope that your Tuesday has gone great. I hope all your vacations previous to this Tuesday went great. And I hope your future vacations that you are guaranteed to take at least 10 times for the rest of the year go great. Colby, has your Tuesday been as great as I hope it's been?
It's been very good, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I wish yours was going better. I think you deserve it. It's a glorious Tuesday, but it was a good day. Now that I'm here with you, now it's a great one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And you know what? This is going to be a great hour. We're here for the hour here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel. If you guys are just joining, for anyone that is just joining, listening for the first time, make sure you hit that like button down below, hit the subscribe button, get the notifications. Anytime that we go live, you'll be notified. And we already have our first caller of the night, first time caller, long time listener, Mark Pitts. Saying, welcome back, JG. I've been in the trenches playing JJ Bleday by myself. Don't worry, you're still going to be in the trenches playing JJ Bleday by yourself, Mark. But happy to be back. I hope the trenches do get a little wider for you, Mark, and maybe JJ Bleday widens your pockets as well. Big show today, obviously 15 games on the docket. That means every team across Major League Baseball is taking the diamond tonight on the main slate. A little bigger than normal, usually 11, 12, 13 games. Howard Bender is on the playbook. I did the value vault, and we had Colby. Did PrizePicks today?
Yep, I did PrizePicks today. Yep.
PrizePicks today. Servo on the underdog. So full slate of content over at fantasyalarm.com. So please check that out. All right. With all that aside, Colby, we have some things to get into. We have Las Vegas odds. We have weather, some weather concerns. The weather, we'll just start with the weather. It looks like the only real concern could be Milwaukee and New York. There is a little weather that could impact pitching there due to potential delays, but it doesn't look like anything else is of concern. What do we got for Vegas? Is there anything that stands out? I know on the morning show, you pointed out the San Diego-Pittsburgh line. You'd be surprised if it didn't move. Well, Colby, we've had a drastic shift in that game in general because late news that Yu Darvish was going to be scratched, and they were kind of going with an opener approach. But you were spot on. That line has moved. Why don't you break it down for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not the reason I thought it would. I just thought it came out low and everybody would catch on that the Padres are going to get to Rich Hill. But I mean, that line's moved a little bit and really not all that surprising. Again, it's one of those things where technically I'm right, but the journey there was not correct. It was not how I envisioned it. And to be honest, I almost wish it wasn't that way because Yu Darvish was a guy I really, really thought of for him for the PrizePicks video today at Fantasy Alarm. And I know a lot of people were big on him, but we will be #without you tonight in this one. But yeah, that line moved a little bit, but my thoughts on the San Diego Bats has not changed. I still like the over in this game. Whatever the team total is for the Padres, just take the over.
Dude, you are, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm looking at my spirit animal live with the dad jokes, like this is like just, this is great. John just poo-poos all my dad jokes and moves on, and I can't get enough of it, without you. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
That's going to be my new hashtag every fifth day for Yu Darvish for the rest of the year. So thank you for the content. I will be stealing it unless you trademark it, then I won't. Yeah, so like anything else notable, I mean, we have Coors Field here. That game actually been bet down to 11.5. It was at 12. Some places was 12.5. I see 11.5 now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Anything else of note in terms of over-unders?
If the wind was blowing out, the one in Chicago would be interesting with Philly, but with how good Suarez has been, it'd mainly be that Philly side of the ball going against Jamison Town and his struggles against lefties. Cleveland with Gavin Williams and Brady Singer sitting at 9 right now, that really hasn't moved. The Guardians, I think they were your they were either your top stack or your contrarian stack when we did like the early preview of the slate. That's holding strong, which is a bit interesting. And the only thing I could think with that Colorado game in Coors is that it hasn't moved too much. I'm guessing that's because Kershaw's on the mound for Colorado and they don't want to push that too high, despite how bad Connor Seabold is. Those are kind of the ones that really stick out. It was interesting to see the Kopech Otani game bump up a half run. A little bit interesting there, but there are some good BVP numbers against Kopech in that Angels lineup. So really, the biggest mover was the Pittsburgh one. Other than that, it's all pretty much the same from the early preview. And the weather, I agree with you. Back to that, it seems like the Mets game might be the only one that we should really be somewhat concerned about.
Yeah, so with that, let's get into pitching. As we always do, we're going to break it down position by position on this show. Make sure to get your questions in on chat. Colby and I don't bite all too much, and we will be happy to answer any and every DFS question you guys have. And even if you have some prop questions, again, Colby did the PrizePicks video over on fantasyalarm.com, so he's in touch with his props for tonight. I'm just coming off the Better Baseball betting show too. So we're both on our Vegas-ish tonight, Colby. So starting at pitcher, starting off at the top of the list, Shohei Ohtani, Kevin Gausman, Joe Ryan, Framber Valdez, over 10K. You and I both talked about this tier last night as kind of Ohtani and then everyone else. Still feel the same way, or has anything changed for you?
I've started to warm up to Kevin Gausman a bit more. The more looking into it, I know the Giants' strikeout woes of late have been more against lefties than righties, but it's just so hard. You go look at Kevin Gausman's splits; those home numbers are so darn hard to ignore. When you look at him this year, it's like a 2.61 ERA at home. Strikeout rates north of 35%. Keeps the ball in the park. I mean, I've really warmed up to Gausman. Then you go look and it's like, well, the Giants haven't struck out a ton against righties, but this dude at home is different. I know, the built difference, this little cliche that's getting thrown around, but at home, he truly is. Like, there's just something about him in his home park. He should get plenty of run support tonight. He's in line for a win. And you talked about it when we did the early preview. His chances of double-digit strikeouts this year, his odds are as high as anybody is doing it. Like, at home, he's Spencer Strider-esque with this 35.5% strikeout rate at home. And yes, his last time, he flopped at home. In his last start at home, he flopped in a great matchup against Minnesota. But go look at the ones before that. Houston, double-digit Ks. Milwaukee, double-digit Ks. You go down a bit further, sorry about you, but the Yankees, double-digit Ks. It's just, at home, he's different. Compared to just a few hours ago, I've really, really warmed up on Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, and the field is too. If you look at ownership here between, this top tier, it's Ohtani, it's Gausman, and nobody else is even close. It is everyone's going to one of those two guys, and it's mainly because you can pair them with some value that we're going to get to in a second, where it feels like, all right, my lineup's going to start with either Ohtani or Gausman, and then we're going to go dip down into the value tier with the likes of Wu or Gavin Williams or, was Yu Darvish no longer Yu Darvish? So I agree. I think those two are the top dogs, and it doesn't help Joe Ryan that he has to face Atlanta. And Framber, I think people are staying away from Framber more because St. Louis' history against left-handers than it is like Framber himself, because, casually coming off 8 innings of 4 hits, 2 runs, had a perfect game going through 6 innings in that game. And then, just the ever so average 9 strikeouts and 33 fantasy points for Framber. So I think he's a little contrarian of the 4. But then we get to the next tier. And I think you and I had a very interesting debate about 2 guys in this tier. Gallen is fine. It's Tampa. It's a really tough spot. Kershaw's in Coors. I don't know if we really want to necessarily be that bold, although the Rockies literally cannot hit left-handed pitching to save their life. So, at least, stop and think about it, maybe. But Taj Bradley and Bryce Elder are 2 guys that you liked Bradley a little more, and I think I like Elder a little more. Has that changed? Do you still find yourself gravitating to Bradley? Because I still find myself, and it's a question that we just got in chat by Mo Money. Mo Money, money sign. Maybe that's your actual name. Do you like Elder? I do. What say you,
Yeah, I've switched. I've cooled on Bradley a bit. The more you look into it, it's one of those things in the early preview, you get enamored by all the positive things. Then
Right.
once you start getting a little bit closer to lineup lock and you start actually have to click in the plus button in the draft player next to their names, you start seeing a little bit. That pitch count worries me.
Right.
It's just something where Arizona could just sit back and say, we're just going to work counts. Because if we can get Bradley out in the fourth inning, who cares? He can go 4 innings, 2 hits,
Right.
3 walks, 9 strikeouts. We get him out in the fourth, we're okay.
Right.
And that could be something they do. And Elder's in a very good spot. We talked about Minnesota is going to play up any starter. You could be the most strikeout, like minimal strikeout arm there is. And Minnesota is going to play you up to at least
Yep.
close to a strikeout per inning. And when you look at his offense, yes, his offense has a tough matchup. They'll get him the run support. Elder splits, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's better on the road than at home.
Yes.
But even so, like it's good when you're on the worst side of your splits and you're still a 3.1 ERA guy. Like
Right.
that's good. That's a good problem to have.
Right.
So yeah, I've flipped a little bit. I still like Bradley strikeout upside in pretty much any start that he's going to
Right.
have. But for that second arm that I'm looking at here, save a couple $100. Elder's in a really good spot. It's hard not to like him.
Yeah, and I think what I found interesting looking at some things for Minnesota is like the ever so revolving door that they've had this year with who's been in and who's been out offensively. Like they've lost Buxton a couple times, they've lost Polanco a couple times. Rice Lewis didn't start the year. Kirilloff didn't start the year. Like it's just been so up and down. There's been no consistency. Larinack was good, then he wasn't, then he was sent down. Kepler was hurt, then he was bad, then he was good. Now he's fine. Like there's just no consistency in the Minnesota offense. And in June, their 27% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching that was already leading the league is at 29% just against all handednesses. Like they just strike out. That's just the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. So I think Elder is a really good play here at 9,200. Mo money sign. So yeah, we like Elder quite a bit. What about this next tier? I'm not entirely sure we need to even pretend like this 8K tier exists and we could just like move on. I don't know if you have any of these three guys in your player pool, but I'm not looking at Kopech, Abbott, or Wells. If anything, I'm targeting a couple of
Couldn't agree more. I think that's it. Those are all guys to look
them.
at. Like when you get down there, I mean, we talked about it. I don't really want Kopech. I don't like to go out of Otani. Just
No.
it's a pretty good strategy I like to abide by. Talked about in the early preview, Andrew Abbott is flirting with fire. Like
Yes.
he is prone something the regression monster you see on Twitter, it's coming. I don't know if it's going to be this start, but Baltimore's fine against lefties, but he's towing the line.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not pretty. So he's in trouble. I don't like any right-hander against Cincinnati right
No.
now. There's some guy in that lineup. I don't remember his name, but Ellie De La Cruz or something like that. And he's
Something, yeah.
pounding right-handers. And Alcantara, we're going against him, kind of like Garrett Whitlock, actually, for Boston. And this one's interesting. Paul Blackburn has kind of resurfaced this year as a semi-reliable strikeout arm. And I don't know if you know this, but there's not much in that Yankees lineup. We're about 2 injuries away from you and I skipping this podcast in this live stream and jumping in as the 6 and 7 hitters in that lineup. Which, hey, I won't strike out. I'm just gonna do roll me overs to second base the entire time. I'm guaranteed for that as a little rollover lefty swing. But I mean, look at Blackburn's numbers. Like
Yep.
I know years past I've loved lefties against him, but this year, I mean, we could get a quality start, 5, 6, 7 strikeouts. God forbid he gets the win. And it's a really good spot for him. So Blackburn's kind of appealing if you're really, cost conscious. But if you can do it, I think Elder's the SP2 that we want.
Yeah. I don't actually hate the Blackburn thing. The Yankees have been the worst offense in literally every category against anybody in June. They are last in OPS. They are last in WOBA. They have a sub 200 team average as well. Like just rarefied air of bad for the Yankees. So I'm with you. I actually do think you get to Blackburn. The only problem is, I think the elephant in the room is what we're doing with Brian Wu, because the field is getting to Brian Wu. And another question that one of our most reliable and trustworthy listeners here, Ryan, shout out to you, Ryan. Questions every day in the chat. Does Wu feel like a trap? Um, you and I talked about it on the podcast. You love the strikeout stuff that this kid has, and it's really hard not to. What say Wu, Colby, about Brian Wu up against Washington tonight?
I mean, one of the best wow you arms on the slate. Talked about it in the early preview. That's what he is. Picking against Washington is tricky.
Yes.
They are the scrappiest death by 1,000 cuts team. They're not gonna trounce you for 4 home runs. What they're gonna do is annoy the crap out of you with 7 singles, 3 walks, and somehow every hit is timely. That's
Right.
just how it is. I mean, in June, league's lowest strikeout rate, so that's not necessarily great for Wu, but I mean, only a 701 OPS. That's almost bottom third in baseball, 87 WRC plus. We're talking a little bit below average. You can make, or Wu can make a case for Wu tonight. I think you can do it. He's cheap enough, and the strikeout upside is there no matter the matchup. So it certainly can be done. Washington is a trappy offense, especially for DFS purposes. And on a 15-game slate, you may have a harder time justifying using him as the SP2. But if you're going to say, screw it, I'm putting 5 Dodger bats in and we're calling it a day, Wu could do worse than Wu. Like, he's in a good spot. I do like him tonight.
I agree. It's hard to ignore him as your SP Wu because especially when you're paying up for someone like Shohei Ohtani or Kevin Gossman, um, using Wu as your SB Wu would make a lot of sense, and it is something that a lot of people are toying with. I mean, if you are, just messing with it, you have $4,000 either way. You spin it with Wu Otani or Wu and Gossman. So I like Brian Wu. So do Wu. Anything else on the mound that you have interest in? Like, are we going to give Gavin Williams another chance tonight? He is really, really cheap, but it's very disappointing when you make your major league debut. And this is recency bias at its finest, right? Very disappointing when your start comes against Oakland and it's not a good one. Like, that is where I think a lot of people are probably putting a negative check mark in the Gavin Williams column, but I feel like that's a mistake. I also think, like, you look at it and a lot of people are going to names like David Peterson and Martin Perez and they're not playing Gavin Williams. Where, like, I would rather just take the shot on Gavin Williams as opposed to David Peterson, who has stunk pretty much across the board during his time at the majors and even in the minors this year. And Martin Perez, I mean, Detroit has been scrappy. We talked about it on the podcast last night, and then they went out and scored 9 runs against Texas last night. So, like, any interest in Gavin Williams, or are we just okay going to Wu and then moving on from there?
Yeah, I like the matchup for Williams. There's enough strikeout upside. Kansas City for the whole season is one of the worst against righties in terms of strikeout rate. And I mean, here in the month of June, they just haven't done much against righties as well. When you look at hard hit rate, bottom 5 in baseball. There's no thump in that lineup since Vinny P went out. So I definitely think you can go with Gavin Williams. His strikeout prop, I remember doing it on PrizePicks today, was at 5, and then it dropped to 4.5. I wrote up the preview of it, got ready to record, and then I looked and it jumped back up to 5. So that's stunk. But I do think he's got 5+ strikeout upside tonight. I
Right.
definitely think he'll be better than he was in his debut against Oakland. He should get quality starts very well and play for him. Should get the win there. And then after Williams, I mentioned him briefly, and I know there's a comment about it. I don't know if I like him more than Wu, but Garrett Whitlock's in a good spot for a win. I mean, pitchers against Miami, a.k.a. Sandy Alcantara, probably in a good spot for a win. I think Boston's going to give him enough juice. And I just don't know if Whitlock has the upside that other guys do on this slate, but I think he's a reliable floor. And Miami, league average strikeout rate. They're also a death by 1,000 cuts team. I don't think he's going to get beat by any of the big power bats in that lineup. Maybe a couple base knocks here and there, but Whitlock seems more of a floor than an upside play to me.
Yeah, I don't hate Whitlock. I also am with you, Michael. I would rather have Wu. I understand, like, you're getting leverage playing Whitlock in a tournament. So if you want to look at it from that perspective, I can't disagree. I think Whitlock's fine. I don't love him. We do have to consider Miami getting Chisholm back. Hitting fourth tonight is definitely a nice piece, and lefty power has been what's given Whitlock fits this year. So keep that in the back of your mind. And one more question at pitcher here, Colby. Uh, Michael also playing into the dad joke thing. As Eminem would say, will the real Brady Singer please stand up? I mean, I don't know who the real Brady Singer is because he was bad. And then last year he was really good. And then this year he's been bad. So I will say Colby already mentioned it. I really like the Guardians tonight. So I'm not getting to Brady Singer as much as you, Ryan. Colby, what are your thoughts on Singer? Any interest or no?
Only interest I have in Singer is the lefty bats going against him.
Let's move on to catcher. Um, so catcher typically a position it's easy to spend down on. It feels like a slate that we want to today, especially when you're factoring in getting in an 11K pitcher or likely an 11K pitcher in your lineup. But if you're not, any interest, actually, we don't have a Dodgers lineup, but the more I think about this, at least I don't think we have one yet. The more I think about this, Clayton Kershaw will use a personal catcher in Austin Barnes. So I was about to ask about Will Smith. I guess if Will Smith DHs, he, is interested. If Will Smith DHs, are you interested here at 6K?
I mean, he's the cover boy of the PrizePicks video, so I do like him today.
Ah,
But in terms of the price tag, I don't know. That's a bit
see,
lofty for the lineup that we're about to make. I know
right,
just feasibly forecasting it, it's probably
right.
not going to be feasible to do it. Love Will Smith. Love him tonight. I hope he gets an RBI at least. That's what I said in the video. But for 6K, I think it's not going to be feasible for the lineup that we're going to run, especially with paying up for semi paying up for that second pitcher. So I don't think it's going to be feasible to get Will Smith. But if you play him, I have no qualms with it whatsoever if you can fit him in.
Any other catcher above like $4,000 really pique your interest, or are we really just interested in spending down at the position?
Probably looking more to spend down. I know Adley's good against lefties. You could roll with him. If I'm not mistaken, Elias Diaz has good BVP numbers against Kershaw, but he's about the only Colorado bat that can hit lefty. So it seems like it's a one-man show there. I know in the playbook written by some guy named Howard Bender, he's big on Gary Sanchez tonight. And honestly, we said it, right-handed bats against
Yep.
Rich Hill, you're probably going to be okay. So Sanchez could be an interesting spot, and 4,200 for him really isn't all that bad.
No, especially when you look at San Diego's lineup as a whole, they are very expensive. The first six guys, I think Sanchez is the cheapest of the bunch, or him and Kim are like arguably like the same price essentially. Um, Sanchez against lefties this year, very small sample. Okay, like we're talking 27 plate appearance sample, 444 ISO. It has literally but 30% strikeout rate. So like when the term all or nothing is used, like a picture of Gary Sanchez versus left-handed pitching shows up right next to it. So I agree. I think there is power upside for Sanchez. But I do think living in this sub 4K range is probably the best decision we should make. And someone you mentioned last night's podcast was Matt Tice. Any interest here at 3,700 against Michael Kopech? He's been largely good. And John and Pema and I talk about this all the time. Angels catchers this year have just been largely good. Like O'Hop was really good. Tice has been good. Chad Wallach has been really good. Any interest in Tice at 3,700, or are we looking at someone else down here?
Yeah, if he cracks the lineup, I mean, he's been good against righties this year. And when you look at Kopech's numbers, lefties, he's been a little bit tougher on lefties, but I mean, it's one of those things where Kopech is just bound to struggle at some point. It just happens. He's prone to blowups. No fault of his own, or maybe all the fault of his own. But yeah, if Tice cracks the lineup, he's interesting.
He's not. Don't worry. Just looked at the lineup.
Okay.
Just
Well,
saving you. Wallach is in the lineup. So Wallach hitting eighth. They must like something righty there because, but like sometimes I just don't understand it. I guess righties have a 241 ISO against Michael Kopech this year, so don't hate getting Wallach in the line. Would you play Wallach hitting eighth?
he
Three
hasn't
thousand
he hasn't
dollars?
he hasn't been as good
No, he has
against
not.
righties. I mean, I guess he could do it. It's a cost saving option. I think. I mean, if it's going to come down to Chad Wallach, I'll pay a couple hundred more dollars and maybe look up to the likes of the. I mean, Keber Ruiz is okay, I guess. Yanier Diaz is always in play. I think he cracked the early preview that we
Yep.
did.
He's my
So
guy. He's my
yeah.
guy. Dude,
Well,
he
Montgomery's been bad. We've talked
Yep.
about it. Bad against righty or bad against right-handed hitters. So he's in play.
There's also, and I didn't really think about it from this perspective, and maybe Monty doesn't suffer for this, but maybe there's some jet lag here for St. Louis coming back from Europe a couple days ago. You know, we were in Great Britain. Maybe we got a little juice on the Houston side here. Now Diaz has been like largely doing all of his damage against righties this year, but 308 average, 4 home runs over his last 10 games. Like this dude has kind of been a beast. Wouldn't want to waste my. I'm happy we don't have the first base eligibility too, because that always felt like a waste using him at first base. But Yanier Diaz 3,300. Yan Gomes, Colby has been like Babe Ruth when it comes to hitting left-handed pitching throughout like his career, and it even at his like advanced age, I don't know what it is that he sees against lefties, but 298 ISO, 394 WOBA against southpaws. I know we talked about Ranger Suarez being pretty good on last night's pod, but any interest in Yan Gomes here?
Against a lefty, you got to consider it. I believe the winds are blowing in there, which is tough. And Ranger Suarez is a
Right.
guy that you're very high on. So it's been tough to kind of attack him of late. So I'd rather just go down a couple $100 and get a guy like Yanier Diaz. And then the other one, what do you think? This is, we're really kind of just throwing lines in the water and see if we catch a fish here with this one. But if you're going to look at the Guardians offense with
Knew
lefties
it.
against Brady Singer, I know the numbers aren't there. I know the numbers aren't there. I'll be the first, second, and third person to admit that to you. But I mean, this price point, he's hitting ninth, second leadoff man. That means
Yep.
if he gets on base, the boys up top, Juan Rosario Ramirez, and Josh Naylor. I mean, if you're gonna go with Guardians, why not consider this guy at this price?
I agree. And it correlates right with what the Better Boss said. Terrified of Singer. I don't know if Matt. I don't know if you're saying you're terrified of like using him or playing people against him. But like I feel very confident in using Guardians today. Lefties have been what given Brady Singer fits this year. Like lefty power, and that's what Bo Naylor showed at the minor league level this year. Almost a 500 slug, and that's pretty elite coming from the catcher spot. If you're going to get a catcher that has that, type of power from that position, like sign me up. Brady Singer has allowed a 231 ISO against lefties. He's allowed a 382 WOBA, 61% hard hit percentage, I should say. So like, yeah, I think Bo Naylor, and truth be told, Colby, like a lot of people seemingly getting to Naylor because he's a punt. He's 2,600. He's free. If he gives you the twofer that he gave you last game, he pays off his salary in spades, and it allows you to comfortably spend up on Dodgers because ultimately, as we pivot to first base right now, Freddie Freeman is $6,200, and you look at like where's Mookie, $6,400. Like every Dodger, the catcher spot $6,000. Like it's very hard to spend up on multiple Dodgers. Bo Naylor makes a lot of sense. But speaking of Dodgers at first base, Freddie Freeman, 6,200. Is he our top first baseman spend of the day, or what do we got over 5K if it's not Freeman?
Yeah, I mean, Freeman's good. Seabold has some reverse splits this year, but I believe for his career, he's largely been worse against
Yep.
lefties. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm definitely fine. Any Dodger bat, I'm fine with tonight, to be honest.
Right.
Like the return of Max Muncy, most likely, he's in play. Second base extraordinaire Mookie Betts is fine. So, I mean, there's definitely options you can go
Now
there.
shortstop, by the way. Now shortstop on
I mean,
DraftKings.
I love DraftKings. Shohei Ohtani, the first baseman at times. I love it.
Yep.
It's amazing. But at first base, yeah, I mean, Freddie Freeman is, I'd say he's probably the top play if you go down a little bit. I believe for the BVP truthers out there, Pete Alonso has a good track record against Julio Teheran. I believe it's like 5 for 7 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's against him, but he's got good numbers there. And the weather is the only thing that concerns me there.
Right.
So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Other than that, I'd like to go Joey Votto, but I don't love attacking Tyler Wells. He's been actually pretty
He's been pitching
good.
too Wells.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. But I mean, other than that, outside of 500, that's pretty much where I'm locking in. It's pretty much I'm going to pay up for Freddie Freeman, or I'm going to go down to a particular Guardian once we start talking sub 4K first baseman.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. Like, I think even when you move down into this mid-tier range, like if you're stacking Red Sox, Justin Turner has had some big games this year. He's been largely himself again. He looks like the kind of 300 hitter that he's been for year upon year upon year. Especially lately, he's been really good. You could play him against Alcantara. Nate Nathaniel, not Nate Lowe, is just a professional hitter, although the power has seemingly like fallen by the wayside again. A lot of doubles this year. I think Texas is in another good spot against Matt Manning, and we know how potent their offense is. But I agree. I mean, the guy you were talking about was Josh Naylor, not Bo Naylor, but Josh Naylor, who I said was in the top 10 of RBIs last night on the podcast. I disrespected Josh Naylor because he's in the top 5 for RBIs this year. He comes into tonight's game 5th with the 57 RBIs. Maybe that's a good trivia question for those out there. Who's the top 5 in RBIs? I bet you nobody would guess Josh Naylor, but here we are, 291 with 25 extra base hits, including 10 home runs and 57 ribbies on the year. Just feels like too good of a spot to pass on Naylor at $3,900.
I think you're right. And he's a left-handed bat going up against Brady Singer. He's been productive. Why not? I definitely like him tonight. He's a good value. If you can't get to like Freddie Freeman, which it might be hard to depending on your build, I think you're just fine with Naylor. I think the upside is pretty high with him.
Yeah, the 3 highest owned first basemen tonight: Freddie Freeman, Josh Naylor, and Josh Bell. The 2 teams that we've probably talked about the most through 2 positions. So, any punty options that you would look at, Colby? Or are you ready to move on to second?
I wish Howard Bender put him in the playbook as one of the cheaper plays. I wish Ryan Noda had been a little bit better of late. He's kind of just slumping a little bit over his last 7 or so games. Whenever he's facing a righty, I would like to look at Noda more because, I mean, 366 WOBA against him this year, 804 OPS for the year as a whole. I would love to look at Noda in a good matchup against the Yankee right-hander who against lefties a little bit of trouble in terms of batting average against. So, yeah, I just the last 10 games scare me right there. If he's not going to give me power, I can't live with that crooked number in the strikeout column. So I think first base, I don't know if I want to go much lower than Naylor.
93 strikeouts in 75 games for Ryan Noda. He would break the all-time record if he played every day. I would just pay homage because I'm going to be stacking San Diego a lot tonight. I think you and I talked about that a lot. Nelly's been okay lately. He's hit a couple home runs. He's had a couple dual RBI games. So I would be okay getting to Nelly Cruz. I mentioned San Diego's hard to get to. And if you want to stack Padres, 2,900 Nelly Cruz is not all too bad. Vladdy Guerrero, any love from Mo Money sign in the chat? He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. I think it turns out to be, one of those things at that price point. If I can get Vladdy in there, I'd almost try to do some reshuffling and just get up to Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
I'm close enough.
Yeah. And he's been good the last few games. And we know he's an elite player, but just feels like opportunity cost. You're just kind of throwing it away. Let's move to second, where Marcus Semien tops the list. But Colby, is he your top second baseman? Is there any second baseman over 5K that really you got your eye on, or is there anyone? Is it the next tier that you're really taking a look at?
Well, the answer was about to be no, and then you opened the door, and I couldn't just give a simple yes or no answer. I don't think I'm paying up too much at second base. It's a little trappy up top, is what it seems like. I don't really want Tyro against Kevin Gossman. I mean, if you're going to pay up, Semien's fine. Not really a lefty for Albie, so no thanks. I'm not really looking at Nico Horner with how good Ranger Suarez has been. We talked about going up against Taj Bradley. Yeah, I think I'm dropping down. If you are looking at going at Tyler Wells, Matt McClain, very good against righties. So he could be a guy that you could look at there to pay up for him. I mean, do we go superstar extraordinaire Hae-Sung Kim?
Yes,
I
we
mean,
do.
he's Fernando Tatis.
He
He's
is.
cheap Fernando Tatis tonight. That's what he is.
Isn't that funny? It's just he has been great, and he's been great against left-handed pitching specifically. And so, like anyone that wants to poo-poo Ha-Seong Kim, he's leading off. He's one of the cheapest options San Diego has on the board on DraftKings. And against left-handed pitching, this year, Ha-Seong Kim, 212 ISO, 357 WOBA. Also, 13% walk rate if Rich Hill has one of those games where he can't throw strikes. And Ha-Seong Kim has speed. Like, that's just another weapon. Rich Hill getting torched by righties, 213 ISO, 341 WOBA. I love him tonight. I think he is my favorite second baseman on the board. Of the guys above, Simeon does pique my interest the most because he hits righties so well. And Matt Manning, very small sample this year, hasn't been as good as he was last year. But I think it's Kim for me with like a pretty large gap between everyone else. And then the next names, I would probably get to Stott and Jimenez at 4K and 3,900 is probably the next tier I'd live in.
Yep. Outside of, we talked about the whole time Cleveland left-handed bats against Brady Singer. It's the same thing for Philly left-handed bats against Jamison Tyne. Go look at his numbers. Not only has Tyne been bad at home, he's been just as bad, if not worse, against lefties. So the lefty bats are in play. Like when we get to the outfield, like Brandon Marsh, he was my value play in the early preview of the slate. So he'll be an option in the outfield. But I don't mind Bryson Stott. If you're going to throw a couple Phillies in a lineup, I mean, he's cheap enough down there. Second base really seems like a pay down spot. I think that's the easiest place to save a couple dollars tonight.
Yeah. And I don't think there's much after that either. Like, you could play Vargas, who's in cores, obviously. You could play Andy Ibanez if you wanted to at 2,200, who homered again last night. I think those are two punty options. But let's move on to third. I think second is largely solved. Third base is a position we're going to want to spend up on. And it's usually a position we spend up on. And again, opportunity cost comes into play when you don't spend up on third base. When you have the likes of Manny Machado against Rich Hill, Ellie De La Cruz just in life against anybody. Jose Ramirez gets Brady Singer. And I know you BVP truthers are foaming at the mouth looking at Jose Ramirez numbers against. And I wasn't calling you a BVP truther, but as you shake your head, maybe I reconsider that. Talk to me about the top tier of third because it is elite. Rafael Devers gets a struggling Alcantara. Like this is a very, very top heavy position tonight.
And what makes it tough is seemingly everybody here is on the best side of their splits.
Yep.
Machado against a lefty, yes, please. Ellie De La Cruz against a righty, yes, please. Jose Ramirez against a righty, yes, please. Devers against a righty who struggled against lefties, yes, please. Everybody here is like, this is where I was almost wish we were on FanDuel, so I got the utility so I can pick two of these guys. Because like this might end up being like as hard as second base is going to be of a decision because of how crappy it is. This is going to be just as hard because of how good it is. I'm very big on Jose Ramirez. The BVP numbers are there. He's crushing righties. Brady Singer's bad against lefties. Ramirez has been seeing like a beach ball at the plate of late. So I really like Ramirez. And this position almost seems like of these top guys, if we are splitting hairs, Ramirez is the cheapest of those top four if we just don't count Devers. So maybe you just kind of go that route with him. But it might end up being like, if you're going to stack Guardians, you have to play Ramirez here. Yes. If you're going to stack Padres, you probably have to play Machado here. So your lineup build may actually end up making this decision for you, or you end up starting at this position, and then this is now going to dictate your future stack. So any of the top four, I do like. Whenever if Ellie was facing a lefty, I'd probably remove him from consideration, but he's got a righty, so you at least have to consider him in that matchup. But I really love Machado and Jose Ramirez's matchups tonight.
Yeah, and I'm looking to see if we haven't gotten a Dodgers lineup yet either. Muncy just floating here at 5,200 as well, like just existing. Might come off the IL. So wait and see. We'll take live about Sunday. Activated Tuesday, so remains to be seen if that actually happens, but just another option to possibly take a look at. What do you like below them? Because again, like it's kind of, I don't know if I want to pass on one of those guys. I'll throw out a name and tell me what you think. Michael Bush, 3,300. I still think that's even too expensive for him, but Seabold's been bad. It's Coors Field. We just saw so many runs scored. We know what the upside is of the Dodgers offense in general. And just because he's been bad doesn't mean he's going to continue to be bad. He was really, really good at the minor league level. And he is one of their best prospects, maybe someone that they look to trade to acquire a pitcher that they desperately need come deadline. So, any interest in Michael Bush 3,300 if he's starting and there's no Muncy, or if he's just starting in general?
I mean, very affordable piece of
Right,
a Dodger stack if you want to go that route. And in the minors this year, I mean, he had a 998 OPS
right.
against righties with, what was it, 7 home runs in about 130 at bats or so, 11 doubles as well, 20 total extra base hits against righties. So it's there. Seabold's bad. If you want to, I think what's going to ultimately happen for those that end up doing Dodger stacks is you're going to have to pick that ancillary piece that hits, whether it ends up being a James Outman or a Jason Hayward or the Michael Bushes of the world, Miguel Vargas. That's the one you're going to have to pick. And Bush is a guy with enough power. We just need that. We need one swing with one barrel and that ball to be in the air. And he's probably going to leave the yard. He's got that upside. He's got that power. So I don't hate it. If you're paying down, it's going to be really hard to sell me on not paying down at third base. Like, there's just too many good options.
I agree. And let's backtrack a couple questions right now. Aaron Campbell in chat asking which Rogers Detroit catcher tonight. I know one of them went yard last night and has a sick mustache. Um, so any love for Jake Rogers tonight? I mean, look at that stash. I mean, I might play him just for the stash. It is worth noting, though, he has hit lefties decently well. He is coming off a home run, multiple hits last night, 190 on the year, 10 home runs for Jake Rogers. Any Jake Rogers love tonight?
I mean, 7 of those 10 homers have come against lefties.
Yep.
Martin Perez served up a 342 WOBA, 2 right-handed hitters. And yeah, I mean, at the catcher position, if you're not paying up, you want to save a couple $100 on certain guys, you want to drop it down there. Rogers has been good against lefties. The numbers don't lie. So I don't hate it. I'm always down to attack Martin Perez on slates.
Agreed.
So yeah, I mean, I can definitely be sold on that one. And especially if it allows you to, if you're doing a Padre stack and you want to get up to Machado at third base, or you want to go up from some other middling second baseman or shortstop to get Fernando Tatis Light and Ha-Seong Kim, then yeah, go for it. I'm all for it.
Speaking of Ha-Seong Kim, Ryan gives us second base is gross tonight. That is absolutely correct, Ryan. It is,
Agreed.
as you've heard. King of Smack has a FanDuel question, but it will apply to anything we talk about. What's up, guys? Thanks for your content. No problem, King. I have a question. Would you guys play Gossman with a Toronto 3-man, Texas bottom 3, which is the top 3 for most teams, with some cheap Pittsburgh bats? With McCutcheon, I'm assuming, I don't know who Mick Luton is, but I'm assuming that's McCutcheon. Maybe we ran out of characters there. Yeah, if you wanted to get to Toronto, that's fine. We've had a couple questions about Toronto already. I think, them San Francisco going with the opener approach is obviously interesting, followed by Alex Wood. Alex Wood has not been great this year, coming off a really, really bad start or outing against San Diego. So yeah, you can go Toronto. I think Texas is fine too. Colby, what do you? I don't love Pittsburgh, but now that Darvish isn't on the mound, it's fine.
Yeah, it's right now. It's hard to feel good
Right.
about playing multiple Pittsburgh bats, let alone one, let alone
What?
multiple.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the Pittsburgh route. I'm not really feeling that. All for Kevin Gossman. We talked about him. I'm totally fine with doing that. You can get to Toronto. I think it can be done. In Texas, I think it can be done too, because like you said, that bottom third is many of those guys are probably maybe 1, 2, or like 5, 6 hitters for other teams. So it can be done. I think there's better stacks to go for. If you're going contrarian with many different lineups, sure, throw one in going that
Right.
route, get some exposure to Toronto. But if you're making like one lineup and that's your bread and butter for the night, I would go with a different stack.
Last question that we have right now is Nick Madrigal a good play? This feels like I'll get out in front of this. I know he's been running a lot. I feel like it's a no because he's third base eligible, and like that just we just talked about it. Like this is not the position you want to get cute with, and he just has actual negative power. I think. I think that's what they put on his 0 to 60 like scale, or 20 to 60. Like it was they just put negative. It's like one negative number. So any thought anything to add on Nick Madrigal, or run ahead to the shortstop?
He's a victim of that position on the slate tonight.
Yeah,
That's
he
what it
is.
is.
He is.
Other times maybe, but not tonight. Not tonight.
Not tonight. So let's head over to shortstop. Um, Again, guys, if you want to get into the chat, please ask any questions you got. You know, if you want to play McLuton, if you want to play Madrigal, just throw any questions you guys got. And don't be afraid to go sign up for the fantasy football draft guide we got over at fantasyalarm.com. If you go to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide, you could also go to fantasyalarm.com/allpro to get 50% off your next 6 months here at Fantasy Alarm for MLB, which, if you do the math, takes you through literally the entire football season at half price. So can't really beat that deal, I don't think. So with all that aside, back to shortstop we go. Another position with just elite names at the top. Colby, talk to me with who your favorites are. I mean, we can talk about Mookie here. We could play Seager, who's amazing. Bichette, Turner. Like, what do we got here at the top of the shortstop?
Preview to tomorrow, we're going to go Jordan Westberg. That's going to be tomorrow's play because he's going to get to face a righty, so that'll be for tomorrow. But it doesn't help us for tonight. Although you can still do it, he's still super
Right.
cheap. I'm all for it. Again, we saw last night he just needs to step in the batter's box, and he's almost at 2x
Yep.
for our
Correct.
investment already. So I love the fact that he walked last night. I know it's very menial. I know it's not much, but like to see a guy doing something like that with a hit and a run. So definitely like him at minimum price. Yeah, still at minimum price. So enjoy it while it lasts because it won't be here forever. You can definitely go Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, shortstop extraordinaire, Mookie Betts. Corey Seager's in a very good spot. I do like lefty bats tonight for Texas. Bogarts has actually been decent against lefties here in June, so he could be a part of any San Diego stack against Rich Hill. Matt McClain, already talked about him a little bit. I do like him. So there's definitely some options here at shortstop. And then I talked about Jeremy Pena has been really darn good against lefties here this month. Like absurd. Like him and Jose Abreu have been beating that Houston drum against left-handers. I know when you look at some of the numbers there may not be all that inspiring, but against lefties, Pena's been very, very good this month.
It's been, I know you're saying this month, it's kind of been all year for lefties, or against lefties, I should say. 192 ISO, 371 WOBA. And Colby, I'll back you up even further just to beat the drum even more. Last year, Jeremy Pena against lefties, 218 ISO, 362 WOBA. So, like, we talk about sample sizes and what it means and how much you really want to take a look at sample before, like, you can definitively say, like, a correct opinion. We have a 239 at bat sample size for Jeremy Pena against lefties over the last 2 years. And he's a 209 ISO and a 365 WOBA. Seems pretty damn good to me for a kid just in his second year of Major League Baseball. So I'm 100% with you. This is a guy that was over 5K earlier in the year. He's just obviously gone through his peaks and valleys like a lot of players in MLB do. So I'm with you. He's maybe my favorite shortstop of the day, other than Westberg, who Ryan again brought up a good point here. Still min price seems like a set it and forget it. Yeah, because like Colby said, if he goes 1 for 4 with a run scored and an RBI again, those 9 fantasy points are doing you pretty good. And plus, kid's really talented, so like wouldn't be surprised if he does a little bit more anytime he steps on a diamond. So anything else at shortstop? I don't love it. Like Mookie Betts is getting all the ownership. I understand that has to do with the multi-position eligibility too. Like anytime you see someone like that with multi-position eligibility, that is usually the case. But anything else at shortstop interests you? Like I don't think there is, especially when you have such a stud at 2K. I don't see anything, Colby. Let me know if you do.
The only other one could be JP Crawford. If I'm not mistaken, I think he homered last night.
He did.
I believe
leadoff home run again. That's like the second time in a few games he's hit leadoff home runs.
Yep. And I mean, he's hitting righties at a 260 clip this year. At home, 270 with 357 WOBA, and he gets to go up against Jake Irvin, who served up a 279 average to lefties and an OPS near 8,500. So I don't mind JP Crawford again. I am a little surprised he's still this low in terms of price with a couple multi-hit efforts here and a little bit of pop of late. He may not be a bad option. I don't know if I'm confident enough in stacking Seattle. I don't know if I'll ever get to that point this year if they're going to keep up what they're doing. But Crawford may not be a bad one-off cheap play.
Being a heavy investor in Seattle's offense in seasonal, I am very sad about that. So let's just move on so we don't have to think about it anymore. To the outfield we go. Large position, too long to just name everybody. But our boy Ice Through here, Chase 15 Beast, our boy Ice Through in chat has a question. And it revolves around the first question of the night. Mark also in the... Mark, it looks like you have someone in the trenches with you.
Trench mate.
Yeah, you have a trench mate. Ice Through talking about JJ Bleday, Seth Brown, Ryan Noda stack. So why don't we just jump into the two guys because they're, outfield relevant. I don't hate it. Now, I will say Johnny Brito has been way worse against right-handed bats this year. But Seth Brown, we know, is powerful. Bleday, we know there is some power in his bat against righties and only righties. He's very bad against lefties. What say you about Oakland and a mini stack here?
Very contrarian.
Very contrarian.
That's what you're doing. Those two, Bleday and Brown, have pretty bad numbers at home. In terms of, you're going to look at average and WOBAs, I'm not even going to read them because I may not make it through because it's that bad. But I mean, certainly Brito's been worse against righties, like you said. So, and like I talked about Noda, I would love to play Noda on many slates at his price point. If he's going to stay where he is, I would love to do it. I don't know if tonight's the night. It's just, we need a righty who's bad against lefties to go with the Oakland stack and feel comfortable doing it. If you're making multiple lineups, I'm fine with one or two being an Oakland mini stack and you're going to try to get a little bit contrarian with it. It's just not something I'll be doing personally.
Yeah, if you win a GPP with Oakland on a slate with all 30 teams in the MLB, when they're playing in Oakland, maybe like one of the worst hitting environments in the league, you deserve all the money. So
agreed.
Hats off to you, Ice Through and Mark, if you guys, make it through this one without like catching a grenade by Oakland. Let's go back to the top of this division and just rattle off some of the top names we have here, Colby. I think both you and I agree Fernando Tatis probably the top outfield play of the day. Not to take anything away from Acuna or Betts or Soto or Trout because you could play any of them, but I think Tatis is number one for both of us.
Agreed.
What about the rest of this 5K and above tier? Does anything else like really stand out where you're like, I need to play blank?
I really like Kyle Schwarber's chances for a home run tonight. I know the wind's blowing in. That's the only thing I don't like. Everything else about it I like, even though, maybe it hasn't quite been there of late. And I mean, he's just better than Jake Rogers with the 181 average and the 20 home runs. So, I don't know if we like paying up $5,500 for that, but I love his chances for a home run against Jameson Taillon. I know Taillon's worse against lefties, but Nick Castellanos has been crushing righties of late. The numbers are very, very impressive. Actually, now that I say that, I think I like the whole Philly outfield because there's Kyle Schwarber. I like his matchup. I mean, depending what you want to call Bryce Harper, I like his spot as a lefty. Brandon Marsh has been excellent of late. I like him, and Castellanos has been very good against righties. So that Philly outfield is pretty interesting. Honestly, we look at, that's a team to go with. And I talked about Philly being an interesting stack too, going up against Taillon. So those are some of the outfielders that I really like. And if we see some other guys there, do you play Jazz Chisholm back in his first game back?
I would, because the lefty spot against Garrett Whitlock, I like JD Martinez quite a bit. And you mentioned the Seabold reverse splits this year. JD Martinez has also been a reverse splits hitter this year. And, he's struggling. Maybe that keeps the ownership a little depressed. I would also, unfortunately, I would go back to the well with more Seattle and play Julio Rodriguez, who, he does this every couple games where he seems like he's waking up, puts a few games, strings a couple big games together, and then just falls back into like the sophomore slump. But 2-3 hit games over his last 3 outings. So I like him there. Below 5K.
Can we fall back on the Anthony Santander crutch against a lefty?
Yeah, we can. We sure can. He's
easy enough.
We absolutely can. I know. I mean, dude, he has been We talked about it, and I wrote up Austin Hayes in today's value vault. Like, the guy just crushes lefties. Santander and Hayes, and they're top 10 in the league against left-handed pitching as a team. Like, you can play any of these guys. Santander hitting in the middle of the lineup, Austin Hayes hitting atop their lineup tonight at 3,500. So you could pair them together as a mini stack if you wanted to play Baltimore. Some other names that we get down here in this like sub 4K range. You mentioned James Outman. He is slowly coming back to where he was earlier in the year. Maybe not with the power, but 273 is at least good to see. He just strikes out so freaking much. It's been really hard to like him. I love Jason Hayward. You mentioned him earlier. I know he's very cheap, but he has monster numbers against right-handed pitching this year. Austin Hayes, no idea how he's still 3.5K, Ryan. And what do you think Ian Happ tonight, Colby, as we have a couple minutes to spare here?
Yeah, prefer Hap against righties, BVP if you like that.
Yep.
Not necessarily the greatest against Ranger Suarez. So I don't think I'll be getting to Hap. I don't hate it. It's not one that I'm excited to click draft player next to his name.
Someone I like tonight, because I agree on the Hap front, not excited about clicking his name against righty. I like Jaron Duran tonight. Sandy Alcantara has allowed the fourth most stolen bases this year to opposing players. Duran has a 3 stolen base game recently. Leading off again, has 6 steals over his last 10 games. I even put a little sprinkle on the plus 190 to steal a base tonight for Jaron Duran. So 3,300 leading off. Few minutes left, Colby. I know you love Brandon Marsh. Where do we got Brandon Marsh tonight in the lineup? Brandon Marsh hitting 7th at $3,100 tonight. He has been awesome. Any other value plays that you want to get to in the outfield?
Marsh is kind of the big one, and you took the other one with Jaron Duran. I mean, and if we're going to get weather hold off, I'm never opposed to playing Joey Weimer if he's going to keep being this cheap.
Yep, and he homered right after we talked about him on last night's show, and then he homered. And it wasn't even against a lefty, but he does mash lefties. Couple minutes left, Colby. Actually, just like one singular minute. So why don't we just build the lineup real quick as we get one more question from Jeff Mo Green. How do you feel about Will Benson one-off?
Not for me.
Not for me either. You can if you want as a contrarian play. Let's build the lineup real quick, Colby. I guess we're going to go Ohtani and Woo as our SP Woo there. It'll probably be the route that we take. I know we are going to go with Ha-Seong Kim at second base. We're going to go with Westberg at shortstop. What was our catcher spend on? It was Bo Naylor, right? Were we going to go Bo Naylor at the catcher spot?
Bo Naylor, throw in Jose Ramirez at third.
Jose Ramirez at third. Do we want to go Naylor squared and go with Josh Naylor at first as well?
Yes.
That's a good price. We're definitely going Tatis. Now, this is definitely a little contrarian, I'd say, because we're not, as of right now, playing any Dodgers. But
we can get a value Dodger, at least sneak one in. I mean, we could go Marsh at 31. That gives us about 38, 37, 38.
So that's either out. So we go either Outman, Peralta, or Hayward. Do we have the I guess Hayward or Peralta? I prefer Hayward personally. I think he has better numbers against right-handed pitching this year. All right, so that'll do it. Ohtani, Woo, Naylor squared, Kim, Ramirez, Westberg, Tatis, Marsh, Hayward. You guys can catch us here again next day, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. Me and Colby back at it. And you can catch the Fantasy Alarm MLB DFS podcast here on the Better Sports Network at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with me and Colby tomorrow morning. Big shout out to Colby. Big shout out to everyone that tuned in, chimed in with the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, both this and the Better Sports Network channel, or wherever you intake this live stream and all of our content. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys on Wednesday for the main slate starting at